This is just the most brilliant mix for me, again, of obviously animation, fight choreography, motivations, dialogue, the way the narrative has progressed, and the comedy. Like, all of it just comes together to bake this perfect cake for me.
AoA, that's a triple play. New episodes, I couldn't wait. Yeah. Open your mind at the first gate. Press play, no need to debate. AoA, check me out. Look, clocked in, you can catch the hype. Golden Dawn, how we follow the light. Anime like life, married to it, my wife.
What is going on, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people of all ages? Welcome back to the AoA show. I'm your host, as always, Ian, along with the boys Isaiah.
Oh, hi, yo.
And Gavin.
What is Gucci shoes?
And today we're talking Jujutsu Kaisen episode 19. We had Todo and Itadori share some of the most broness moments I've ever seen, and I could not be more excited to talk about that. But also, let's not forget Fuji and Gang and Todo for all the things that they did, Camo as well. There were a lot of pretty standout moments in this, and I'm excited to talk about it. Hopefully you guys are too. If you guys enjoy the content today, make sure you guys are liking this video, subscribing to the channel if you're new here, and hitting that notification bell so you don't miss any future discussions or videos. Sharing with your friends, because the more the merrier. It starts with us, but it ends with you, and that's the audience. So comment your thoughts down below as well. What did you think of our discussion? What points did you have to add? What really had a profound impact on you in this episode? Did you like it? I would assume most people did, but let us know in those comments down below, and make sure you guys are checking out our live reaction. That is in the AoA Reacts channel. The link is in the description down below. But anyway, moving on with this discussion here. So before we get into the whole Todo and all that kind of stuff, because that was great, we definitely want to give credit to Toge and Fuji and all those guys, and Kamo for his sweet techniques and stuff like that. But I know that it seemed that you had a pretty big affinity towards Toge in this episode, just in general. I didn't know you even liked him so much. He's really cool. But I'm curious what your thoughts were. Because he's never been like loud about it. He's never been like, Toge is one of my favorite characters, and all of a sudden you were like, oh my god, if Toge dies, I'm gonna be so pissed.
I know, it's just the way you said it. It was like, I heard you talking about him in the locker room. I didn't even know you were a fan.
I thought you hated him. No. But it was just all of a sudden you're like, dude, I'm done with this show if they kill him. And I'm thinking to myself in the live reaction, I'm like, I didn't know Gavin stood this guy that hard, but tell me, why?
Dude, he is the absolute G of this entire series, awesome. And if he goes, I go. That is just the way that the boat is meant to sail. No, I mean, I've had like little instances where I'm like, I really like this character. It's just so... I have a thing for very unique characters, and for him, I haven't really seen this adaptation before where it's like verbally you can't speak, you're very limited, and then it's like the words that you do speak, like they blow crap up, but it's like there's a lot of symbolism for that I like, and we've talked about it before where like you can really dissect it in any like little way, but for me it's like, certain words bear certain power, and like each like specific word bears like its own influence more or less. And like for me, I don't know, I like it, and I really like the aesthetic of this character. I don't know why, like it's just really cool with his mouth and like those like zigzags in the circle, and he like has the collar popped up, and like I don't know, it's just I've always liked that, and it's like everything blended together. And not to mention when he just like we knew, like, there was people who were commenting in a couple videos prior when we did our live reaction and discussion where it's like, oh, he can say certain things, but obviously, like, when he does use it, but like more and more, you get to see an impact on his body. And we were like, okay, we saw it with like nose bleeding or whatever it was at the time. And I wanted to know to what extent like his body would go to when he like really uses certain powerful words. In this episode, we got that, and I thought it was badass because like literally it was just blood coming out of his mouth, and like that was just hardcore, which was absolutely amazing. And I don't know why I like that crap, but oh my god, so good. And then finally when we get the I can't even remember, he Fusro Dad, Mother Nature, and then like literally it was Hanami when he made that badass like entrance, and he's like, Megami, I forget, you said like salmon row or something, and he was like, sit back, he like took a step forward, and he was just like, blah, and I was like, holy, like it was badass. And then now you realize in the grand scheme of things, especially when you have cursed weapons, that like you really feel bad for the guy. I know Isaiah made a mention to it, and it's like, wow, that was really like minuscule in terms of like some other weapons in this. And obviously he's like he's not the main character, so he's not going to be this most OP busted, but like his ability is very strong. It's just when you like juxtaposition to some other like abilities and cursed weapons, you're like, wow, he can be outmatched pretty well. And like there's ways around it, and it's like, I don't know, I feel bad. I'm in his camp, and I just love everything about it.
I agree. I think what makes that character incredibly interesting is the very highs and lows of his ability, in the sense that he is incredibly powerful given the correct set of circumstances, but there are huge downsides. And actually, that doesn't just go to his character, it extends to really majority of the characters that we've seen. Mecha as well, Panda, in a sense, the fact that it's like, you the way you were created, etc. But like Mecha, in the sense that it's like, I've been blessed with this ability to do X, but because of that, I'm confined to this bathtub and all this kind of crap. Like, there's huge downsides to what it is that they have. I love that they put such an emphasis. It really gives me a lot of Hunter x Hunter vibes. When you guys get like further into Hunter x Hunter, you're going to see that the power system is very similar in the sense that it's like there's usually always a downside to everything, and it's almost like a contract base, and it's like hardening your resolve in that moment. That's why they like say their moves and stuff like that before they do it and all that. It's really cool how every one of those little minute things plays an actual detail into these characters and the way they fight and their personalities and all that kind of stuff. It's really cool. I also want to talk about Fuji, unless you had anything to add on Toge. But Fuji this episode, and just in general, I'm really starting to see why he is so sought after, I guess, by Sukuna, at least for raw abilities, because if anyone has some potential to grow besides Itadori, obviously, it is him. I don't know if you had any thoughts on him or just anything else.
It's interesting because Megami is good, and he's a good, capable fighter, but like, I do love that he's not this like inherently genius busted character. And because stacked up to mostly all the characters he's fought in so far, he seems to be either evenly matched or underclass in terms of ability. Even like when he was fighting Noritoshi, like, once Noritoshi uses the first attack against Hanami, he makes a point to be like, oh shit, he was holding back against me. Like this dude wasn't even fighting me. He could easily beat me, which I liked because I didn't want the fighting amongst the sorcerers to turn into this like, oh, the younger class is always going to beat him, because it's like, well, if they're all older than them, like some of them should be able to just mollywop them just out of experience alone, which we do see. But I like what's interesting to me about Megami is that the reason his character, at least I'm just assuming, is sought after is like the potential he has as a character. It's not like Itadori where he's like out the gate, he's just got this stupid, disgusting, good ability to move, or he's like incredibly strong, or like he's got this like one, like, but there's like this potential that if somebody gets him and somebody like gets him to harness his skill, he could be one of the most deadly sorcerers or fighters in existence, period. But it's like right now we are literally seeing him like sort of work up through the rings here, and I do like though that despite his stance as a character and as a fighter, he doesn't, at least in my mind, get overshadowed even by people like AoE and Itadori, who are just so like leagues when it comes to like movement and strength, and therefore how that translates to fighting. Like in most of Megami's fights, they just don't last as long, right? Because he either gets put out of commission like early in, or pretty early into the fight, but he's also like not an endurance man again, like someone like Itadori who can just take blows and keep going. But we're like literally seeing him like climb up through the ring, so to speak, and I don't know, I like that. Yeah,
I just love his abilities too, and them going in depth with how he summons those swords and spears and weapons from his just shadow armory is pretty freaking awesome. And the fact that they are so strong is just something that really adds a different dynamic to his character, because Noritoshi says it in the last episode where he's like, oh, it's not often that you get the like people with your abilities that are good at fighting up close if need be. So that's really interesting. And it was really cool how they went in on his Shinagamis that he produces, and the fact that it answered my question that it's like, okay, are they dead? Like, do they respawn? They're dead. Like they're dead, right? Now, and then, their abilities get passed on to the next one. But now the interesting thing for me is I wonder if there's a point, in the future where he can summon other ones out of the 10, or if it's like he's locked in with those 10 that he can do, and then it's just by the time he gets down to his last one, it's just this conglomerate of like all of these creatures combined, because he's lost now one of his dogs. He lost the bird this episode because it got punched in the heart. It's dead. And then he also lost the snake when he fought Sukuna, and Sukuna just blew it up. So that's 3 of his dudes down already. We're not even out of season 1. So like, I'm very curious to know how that. I just love his ability, and I just love getting answers to his ability and like the intricacies of how it works and all that kind of thing. But you know, it was really cool. Hanami as well was just crazy, incredible. Just, you know, I love the voice that they give it, the aesthetic, the motivations, all that kind of thing. And the animation obviously was totally on point, but it was really cool where Maki comes in as well and does what she has to do. And, you know, but unfortunately it's just not enough. And then we get the epicness of an entrance, which is the brothers, the boys, the best friends, Todo and Itadori. This is just the most brilliant mix for me, again, of obviously animation, fight choreography, motivations, dialogue, the way the narrative has progressed, and the comedy. Like, all of it just comes together to bake this perfect cake for me. And just seeing these 2 characters together now, and the fact that Itadori has kind of accepted him now as his best friend and his brother after this, after their short training session and montage, you know, like, I'm just so here for it, man. Like, I love this grouping. I love how in sync they are now. And I love their dynamic where it's like Todo is like, you are my best friend, but it's like, he doesn't pull any punches, quite literally slaps him twice when he's in that. He's almost acting like this coach and this mentor. But I think Todo knows that it's like, there's a lot of inherent ability in someone like Itadori, but not just with his fighting, not with just that skill. And I know it seems silly and you know, and all how he was like, you're my best friend because of your taste in women, the fact that you answered it. But I genuinely do think there is more to Todo's character than that. He seems to come off with this very like base primal thing, but he's very wise in his teachings and the way he goes about it. When he explains things to Itadori, he uses these metaphorical things to break it down, and he relates it to like your soul, your being, nature, earth, and all this sort of thing to kind of like drill it home to Itadori, and that's why he's able to pick up on it so fast. So I love this dynamic that they have together, and I believe that he wants Itadori to surpass him and become something, Sukuna vessel or not, and I think that's what makes this friendship so amazing, to be honest. You know, especially with everything that ensued with their fighting in tandem and stuff like that. But what do you think, Evan?
Oh no, I got a couple things. I want to go back to Megami or Fuji for a second, and it comes with you know, obviously he has 10 of those beings. I'm curious to what happens when I feel like it's almost alluding to eventually he's going to be down to just one. Okay. Eventually, and I'm curious if that is almost like the purpose of these things, because I'd imagine he loses like. One of the biggest downgrades of losing all of these creatures or cursed spirits is that, like, you don't have the utility. Like, you don't have the dogs to sniff out in certain situations. You don't have the bird to, like, fly away and, like, so you use the utility aspect in a fight where it's like you can't spawn, like, these smaller things to help you out, but it's like you might be a glass cannon in a sense, in terms of, like, now eventually you have one being that'll just blow away anything. And it's like, I'm curious to what extent that is going to lead to, and just how, like, OP strong that, like, being is going to be, and if that's what's going to make him powerful per se, because I think we've kind of explained where I feel like there's more to his character other than that's going to really put him ahead in terms of just other sorcerers and things like that. So very curious on that development. And then going back to Todo, what I like about their dynamic is he is like, we've seen Gojo and Itadori and how Gojo teaches him, like literally locks him down, makes him watch movies and this stuff. And that's great. And obviously Fuji has learned, or not Fuji, Itadori has learned from that, but it's like Todo is almost like an older Fuji in a sense, where it's like their personalities are almost similar in terms of like how they act. I mean, obviously Itadori is not all about girls, but it's like, I almost feel like they're very similar in ways. And just with Todo specifically, he is able to explain things that Itadori is able to understand, because it's very easy to get someone like Gojo who knows everything, and it's like sitting down like a not so smart kid next to a genius. That genius may know everything, but he's not necessarily going to be able to explain everything and, you know, teach people to understand, you know, certain points and concepts, where it's like you have Todo, which is almost the best of both worlds, because he knows his experience, and like being on the same wavelength as Itadori, he is just able to explain it in a way that Itadori is going to understand. He doesn't need to be the smartest person ever to, you know, grasp the concept concepts that are being thrown at him compared to like if you have Gojo trying to teach him where he, you know, there might be a disconnect, although I can't say that because Gojo is like also a big Itadori. He has his own comedic ways, but I really like their dynamic in terms of how Todo is literally forcing Itadori where it's like, you're gonna die if you don't learn this on the fly, and like, good luck, I love you, and like that's it, and you're just watching and you're like, okay, now would be like a good time to help, and he's just like, nope, you need to learn it, like you're gonna be the best chef, and like now I just need a Food War spin-off of A Slice of Life with Todo and Itadori, because that's the only way that this show is gonna end perfectly. And I'm actually curious if they hold up their relationship after the fight, in terms of like if Itadori still thinks like that they're best friends, or if they're gonna go off on little tangents.
100% think they're going to.
I really hope
It
they
would
do.
be super weird if they didn't.
no, they're going to. 100%.
If they like finish the fight and he's like, all right, bye. Like there was a play or something.
Yeah,
That would
yeah.
be like,
No,
I mean, it
he's
would be
going
kind of
to.
funny,
Well,
but it
then
would be weird.
I will pose this question to you, because obviously we know that in the start of this whole test,
Sorry, it's my
I will
answer.
beat your ass. In the start of this whole test, we already know the upperclassmen, or at least some of the upperclassmen, via the principal, was told to kill Itadori. Obviously, we know all that is kind of out the window at the moment because of them being attacked. Do we think that with Itadori and Todo now taking on Hanami, that at the end of this fight, Itadori might have a clean slate with the principal and these new upperclassmen, or if even coming out of this, there's still going to be animosity against Itadori, and it's not really going to be like the solution to like the problem that's happening? So that is my question to you guys. I know it's a little bit early to be saying this, but like,
That's a good question.
we also know what is happening with the school, and like kids' lives are legitimately on the line, and you know Gojo can't be a part of it, and it's seeming like Itadori is going to be like a big helping hand in resolving this problem, or at least resolving this problem. So I don't know. I'm curious if you guys think that's going to help his case moving forward in terms of swaying upperclassmen into being on his side. So yes,
I think it'll help his case with the students, right?
Okay.
Like with Noritoshi, obviously Aoi was never really in it to begin with. You know, like I don't know, because like everybody that was tasked with initially killing him, as far as the students are concerned, whether they had like a lot of gusto to go do it initially or not, I think this event will probably like clear him with them. Because if anything, Aoi, even if there are like some stragglers or whatever who don't, like, I don't know, Momo or like just somebody, I feel like Aoi will again like stand up for his boy. But I actually think this won't sway the principal. I think he's gonna be pretty like hard pressed into his, his narrow-minded view of Sukuna and what that means, and he's just Sukuna's vessel type shit. So I think he specifically, and maybe like one of the other teachers maybe, are going to be like still pretty on their BS. But I do think he'll be cleared, at least in the minds of most of the second or the other students.
Yeah, I mirror a lot of what Isaiah says. I don't know if all the students, at least the ones that had like a direct influence through him or something like that, will definitely be swayed. Because the only argument that I could see from the principal and people that are still hesitant to changing is that, sure, Itadori helped, but Itadori's half the reason that they came here, in the first place. So, again, I'm not saying that that's my argument.
I think the biggest... Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No,
but
go ahead.
the biggest case will be if he ends up having to use Sukuna to win this fight. Because if Itadori can beat this guy, whether it's with Aoi's help or not, with his own strength, then I think at least that should help the students verify and being like, no, there is more to this thing than Sukuna's vessel. This is a whole nother person, and Itadori on his own strength, there is inherent value in him and keeping him alive and training him. Like you have to think bigger. It's not just about Sukuna. If he ends up having to use Sukuna, it leads into like the talking about like Naruto Jinchuriki thing of like, oh, this person is just a vessel, and their only real asset is every time they bust out Sukuna, and like there's Itadori's not enough. Then I could see the students still siding with the principal and being like, yeah, no, he helped, but like you were saying, we're only in this problem because they wanted Sukuna, and he can't win a fight if he doesn't use. So if Itadori is able to win this fight on his own strength and on his own merit, then I could see the students being like, no, I think there is something here, like in Itadori the person. Forget Sukuna. There is something there that is valuable and inherently worth keeping alive.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. I think the principal is still going to be locked in that sense because he's like, okay, like doesn't really matter how strong Itadori is or he helped or if he's a good person. It's like bottom line is that I want the amount of ways that Sukuna to be able to escape to be zero. Like that's it, right? Because it's like the only way that they really win like is Sukuna, right? In that sense. So he's like, it doesn't matter. Like Sukuna cannot be even a card played on the table here.
Very accepting.
So yeah, well, that's my predictions anyway. So anyway, folks, that is our discussion for the day. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Make sure you guys are liking this video, subscribing to the channel. You know the whole drill. Big shout out to our patrons, especially our acolytes of anime, Stoic and Nathan. Our comment of the day comes from D Chen. It says, LOL trivia, the principal is a Jimi Hendrix fan and he's looking for a drummer.
Amazing.
I have to say,
That's amazing.
even though the principal's kind of a dick, like I'm very curious to see the extent of his abilities, because I did not see that coming, where he's just like shit, just like whipped out a guitar. I'm like, what? Like that was incredible. So that's gonna be really cool to see. Question for this video: what is the technique that Todo teaches Itadori use and then uses on Hanami that kind of, pushes the fight in a different direction a bit for a second? Let us know what the answer is in the comments down below. We'll know that you watched this entire video, and then comment whatever you wanted to comment, and we might just read it on our next episode. But until next time, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening, and we will catch you on the flip. Peace.
Peace.
Ninjas are samurais, blaze of the kunais. Find me in the leaf of the cloud, screaming out Bankai. We just some ghouls though, who like seeing parts fly.